What if I told you that type 2 diabetes isn't actually a disease? What if it's not a malfunction at all, but your body doing exactly what it was designed to do millions of years ago for a world that no longer exists? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your genes are ancient. They were forged in ice ages and extinction events. But your environment? It's been hijacked. Artificial light, heating systems, bananas in January. Your biology thinks it's preparing for a winter that never comes. And that mismatch, that's not a disease. That's a survival program running on the wrong operating system. Stick with me until the end because I'm going to show you the science behind this, what the research actually says, and give you my take on what this means for your health. Let's get into it. Let's start with what we've all been taught. Type 2 diabetes is a disease. Your pancreas stops producing enough insulin or your cells become resistant to it. Sugar builds up in your blood. Over time, this damages your organs, your nerves, and your eyes. It's progressive, it's chronic, and according to conventional medicine, it's largely irreversible. The solution? Manage it. Take medications, monitor your blood sugar, maybe eventually you'll need insulin injections. And definitely cut the fat from your diet. There are over 60 million Americans right now who are either pre-diabetic or fully diabetic. Globally, that number is approaching 500 million people. And here's what should concern you, it's accelerating. We're seeing metabolic syndrome in teenagers, heart disease in children. Conditions that used to appear in the elderly are now showing up decades earlier. The medical establishment calls this an epidemic. They blame genetics, they blame lifestyle choices, they blame willpower. But what if they're looking at this completely backwards? What if diabetes isn't your body breaking down, but your body doing exactly what evolution programmed it to do? This brings us to Dr. Jack Kruse, a neurosurgeon who spent decades in operating rooms before he started asking questions that most doctors never consider. See, Dr. Kruse had a problem. He was morbidly obese. At his heaviest, he weighed 357 pounds. He knew all the conventional advice. He'd given that advice to his own patients. But it wasn't working for him, and honestly, it wasn't working for most of his patients either. So he did something unusual. He went back to first principles. Not medical textbooks from the 1950s, not pharmaceutical research funded by companies selling diabetes drugs. He went back to evolutionary biology, to physics, to what we know about how mammals actually survived on this planet for millions of years. And what he found was a pathway buried in the human brain. A survival mechanism that's been there since before humans even existed. One that modern life has completely disrupted. He called it the ancient pathway. To understand what's really happening with diabetes, we need to go back, way back, about 67 million years to be precise. That's when an asteroid slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula and ended the age of dinosaurs. But here's what most people don't realize. That impact didn't just kill the dinosaurs. It fundamentally changed the climate of the entire planet. Temperatures plummeted, photosynthesis stopped, the world became cold and dark. The mammals that survived that extinction event had to adapt to something brutal, a frozen world with almost no food. And the ones that made it? They developed something remarkable. A metabolic flexibility that allowed them to survive extreme cold and extreme calorie scarcity simultaneously. This is where it gets interesting. Those survival adaptations didn't disappear. They got passed down through millions of years of evolution, through ice ages and warming periods, all the way down to you and me. We are the descendants of cold-adapted mammals. Our genes carry the programming of creatures that survived in polar environments, and buried deep in our hypothalamus, there's still a pathway that knows exactly what to do when winter comes. The problem? For modern humans, winter never comes. Here's where things get really interesting. Think about what happens to a bear before hibernation. In late summer and fall, bears go into a feeding frenzy. They eat everything they can find, especially carbohydrates. Berries, fruits, anything with sugar. And what happens? They become massively insulin resistant. They pack on enormous amounts of body fat. Sound familiar? Now, if you took that bear to a doctor in October, right before hibernation, and ran a metabolic panel, that bear would be diagnosed as a severe diabetic. Elevated blood sugar, insulin resistance, fatty liver, all the markers we associate with metabolic disease. But here's the thing. That's not a disease for the bear. That's a feature. That's the bear's body preparing for months of survival in freezing temperatures with zero food intake. And when spring comes, when the bear emerges from the den, all of that reverses. The insulin resistance disappears. The fat is burned off. The bear comes out lean with the best body composition it will have all year. What reversed it? Cold. Extended exposure to cold temperatures. Dr. Kruse's insight was this. Humans have the same programming. We're mammals. We descended from cold-adapted ancestors. Our bodies still know how to run this program. The difference is we never let it complete. We eat carbohydrates year-round. We live in heated environments. We never experience the cold that would trigger the reversal phase. So our bodies stay stuck in the preparing for winter mode indefinitely. That's not diabetes, that's a hibernation program that never got the signal to end. So how does this actually work in the body? It all comes down to a small region in your brain called the hypothalamus. Think of it as your body's thermostat, but not just for temperature. It regulates hunger, metabolism, sleep cycles, hormone production, and crucially, how your body stores and burns fat. The hypothalamus receives signals from your environment through multiple channels. Light hitting your eyes, temperature on your skin, the types of food you're eating. And it uses all of this information to determine what season it is and what metabolic program to run. When you eat carbohydrates, especially sweet ones, your brain interprets this as a summer signal. Carbohydrates don't grow in winter. Fruits don't ripen in the cold. So when your tongue tastes sweetness, your hypothalamus thinks summer is here. And what does your body do in summer? It prepares for winter. It stores fat. It becomes insulin resistant to keep blood sugar elevated. It slows down certain repair processes because resources need to go towards storage. Now here's the problem for modern humans. We have access to carbohydrates 365 days a year. We have artificial lighting that mimics summer daylight. We have heating systems that keep us at 70 degrees even when it's freezing outside. Your hypothalamus never gets the signal that winter has arrived, so it never switches to the winter program, the one that would burn all that stored fat and restore insulin sensitivity. You're stuck in perpetual autumn, forever preparing for a winter that never comes. This is where the science gets really compelling. There's a receptor in your skin called TRPM8. It's a cold receptor. When your skin temperature drops to around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, this receptor starts firing signals directly to your brain. And here's what researchers discovered. When these cold receptors are activated chronically over a period of about 2 weeks, something remarkable happens. Your hypothalamus switches programs. It stops using light as the primary signal for your circadian rhythm and starts using temperature instead. This triggers a cascade of changes. Your body starts producing more of a chemical called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or ENOS. This chemical essentially tells your brain to ignore the light signals and pay attention to the cold. Why would evolution design this? Because in a real winter, light cycles become unreliable. Days are short, the sun is weak, but cold is consistent. Cold is the honest signal that winter has truly arrived. When this switch happens, your body enters what Dr. Kruse calls the ancient pathway. Hunger disappears, fat burning accelerates, insulin sensitivity improves, Your body starts producing more brown adipose tissue, which burns calories as heat instead of storing them as fat. This is the reversal phase that modern humans never experience. Now we need to talk about leptin, because this is the master hormone that controls the whole system. Leptin is produced by your fat cells. The more fat you have, the more leptin you produce. In theory, leptin should signal your brain that you have enough energy stored and you can stop eating. It's supposed to be a satiety signal. But here's what happens when you're stuck in perpetual summer mode. Your leptin levels stay chronically elevated. And just like with insulin, your brain becomes resistant to it. It stops hearing the signal. So even though you have plenty of fat stored, your brain thinks you're starving. You stay hungry. You keep eating. You keep storing. This is leptin resistance, and it's at the core of obesity and metabolic syndrome. Now here's where cold changes everything. When you expose yourself to cold temperatures consistently, leptin is released from your fat cells in massive quantities. But something else happens too. The cold causes your leptin receptors to become more sensitive. They start hearing the signal again. And when leptin can finally get into your brain and bind to its receptors properly, it triggers the release of hormones that shut down hunger completely. Not through willpower, through biochemistry. Dr. Kruse describes it like this: cold empties fat cells like screaming. Fire would empty a crowded theater. The fat doesn't just shrink. The cells themselves undergo apoptosis. They die. They're eliminated from your body permanently. This is different from dieting, where fat cells just get smaller but stick around, waiting to fill back up. Cold actually reduces the number of fat cells you have. If this theory is correct, we should be able to find evidence in human populations that actually live in cold environments. And we do. Consider the traditional Inuit people of the Arctic. For thousands of years, they lived in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Freezing temperatures, limited sunlight for months at a time, and a diet that would horrify modern nutritionists, almost entirely animal fat and protein, virtually no carbohydrates. And yet, when researchers studied traditional Inuit populations in the early 1900s, they found something remarkable. Virtually no diabetes, no heart disease, no obesity. These were some of the healthiest people on the planet. Dr. Albert Schweitzer documented this. Weston Price documented this. The Inuit were thriving on a diet and an environment that modern medicine would consider deadly. But here's the tragic part of the story. Starting around 1940, modern conveniences arrived in the Arctic. Heated homes, warm clothing, and most importantly, access to Western foods, carbohydrates, sugar, foods that could be shipped in from warmer climates. Within 2 generations, the Inuit health profile collapsed. Diabetes rates skyrocketed, obesity became common, heart disease appeared. The same diseases that plagued the rest of the modern world showed up almost overnight. What changed? Not their genetics, their environment. They stopped living in alignment with their cold-adapted biology. The Inuit aren't the only example. Let's look at the Sherpas of the Himalayas. These are the people who guide climbers up Mount Everest. They live at extreme altitudes in freezing conditions, and their physical capabilities are almost superhuman by normal standards. NASA actually studied the Sherpas extensively, and what they found was extraordinary. Sherpas can perform physical feats that should be impossible according to conventional exercise physiology. They can climb at altitude with minimal oxygen. They can survive on remarkably few calories. Their metabolic efficiency is off the charts. When Sherpas guide climbers to the summit of Everest, they often have to eat pure butter and lard for the last 2,000 feet of the climb just to maintain their weight. Their metabolisms are burning so hot that they would waste away otherwise. And here's the key detail. The Sherpas have lived in this cold, high-altitude environment for about 25,000 years. longer than any other human population, has been continuously cold adapted. Their biology has fully optimized for this environment. What the Sherpas demonstrate is what human metabolism can become when it's allowed to run the program it was designed for, not disease, not dysfunction, optimization. This isn't just about indigenous populations. Elite athletes have been using cold adaptation for decades, often without fully understanding why it works. Consider Michael Phelps. During his Olympic training, he was reportedly eating 12,000 calories a day. Nutritionists said this was impossible. The math didn't work. No amount of swimming should burn that many calories. But here's what most people didn't know. Phelps trained in water temperatures between 50 and 60 degrees. For hours every day, his body wasn't just burning calories through exercise, it was burning massive amounts of energy just to maintain core temperature. The cold had activated his ancient pathway. His metabolism was running at a level that warm-adapted humans simply cannot achieve. The same pattern shows up in other elite performers. Russian athletes have dominated Winter Olympic sports for decades. Their training protocols have always emphasized cold exposure. They understood something that Western sports science is only now beginning to recognize. Cold isn't just recovery. Cold is performance enhancement at the metabolic level. Now let's talk about why this is getting worse, not better. Your body runs on circadian rhythms. These are 24-hour cycles that govern everything from when you feel sleepy to when your hormones peak to when your cells repair themselves. The master clock for these rhythms sits in your hypothalamus, in a region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this clock is set primarily by light. When the sun rises, light hits your eyes and signals your brain to start the day. Cortisol rises, you wake up, your metabolism activates. When the sun sets, the absence of light triggers melatonin production. You get sleepy. Your body shifts into repair mode. This system worked perfectly for millions of years. But then we invented artificial light. Now we have screens in our faces until midnight. LED lights that mimic daylight, environments that never get dark, and our circadian clocks are completely confused. When your circadian rhythm is disrupted, everything downstream gets disrupted too. Leptin release happens at the wrong time. Growth hormone doesn't surge properly during sleep. Autophagy, the cellular cleanup process that happens during deep sleep, becomes inefficient. And here's the connection to diabetes. When your circadian biology is broken, your metabolic biology breaks too. The two systems are intimately linked. You cannot fix one without fixing the other. Here's something that should concern every parent. We used to think genetics were fixed. You inherited your genes from your parents and that was that. But we now know that's not the whole story. Epigenetics, the study of how genes are expressed, has revealed that environmental factors can turn genes on and off. And here's the alarming part. These epigenetic changes can be passed down to future generations. What this means is that the metabolic damage we're doing to ourselves isn't just affecting us, it's affecting our children and grandchildren before they're even born. Dr. Kruse points to something he calls Factor X. The idea that epigenetic signaling has been accelerating over time. Each generation is more sensitive to environmental mismatches than the last. This would explain why we're seeing diseases of aging in children. Type 2 diabetes in teenagers, heart disease in people in their 20s. Conditions that used to take decades to develop are now appearing in years. It's not that kids today are lazier or have less willpower. It's that they're starting from a more compromised epigenetic baseline. The damage is cumulative across generations. And if we don't break the cycle, if we don't realign our biology with our evolutionary programming, each generation will be sicker than the last. So what do we actually do with this information? First, understand that this isn't about extreme measures. You don't need to move to Antarctica or become a polar bear swimmer. The cold receptors in your skin start activating at around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold, but it's not dangerous. Dr. Kruse developed a protocol that starts simply: face dunks in cold water, cool showers, gradually working up to cold baths. The adaptation period is about 2 weeks for most people. But cold exposure is only part of the equation. The other part is aligning your eating with natural cycles. This means eating carbohydrates only when they would naturally be available, primarily in summer and early fall. It means avoiding carbohydrates in winter when your biology expects a ketogenic, fat-based diet. It means respecting light cycles, reducing artificial light after sunset, getting morning sunlight to set your circadian clock properly. And it means eating foods that support cold adaptation. Seafood is particularly important because of its omega-3 content. In cold environments, your cell membranes need to be more fluid to function properly, and omega-3 fatty acids provide that fluidity. The goal isn't to live like a caveman. The goal is to give your biology the signals it needs to run the right programs at the right times. When you eat a banana in January, your hypothalamus thinks it's summer. When you sit in a heated room all winter, your body never gets the signal to switch to fat-burning mode. These aren't moral failures, they're biological mismatches, and mismatches can be corrected. Does this actually work? Can you reverse metabolic syndrome by realigning with your evolutionary biology? Dr. Kruse did it himself. He went from 357 pounds to losing over 150 pounds in about 11 months. Not through conventional dieting, through cold exposure and circadian realignment. He's documented similar results in his patients. People who were told their diabetes was permanent, who are now off medications. People who struggled with weight their entire lives, who finally found something that worked. And he's not alone. Researchers around the world are starting to investigate cold exposure as a metabolic intervention. Studies on brown adipose tissue activation, research on cold-induced improvements in insulin sensitivity. The science is catching up to what traditional cold-adapted populations have known for millennia. This isn't a miracle cure. It's not magic, it's biology. Your body knows how to do this. It's been doing it for millions of years. We just have to stop interfering with the process. Now, I know some of you are skeptical, and honestly, you should be. Question everything, including what I'm telling you right now. The mainstream medical establishment doesn't teach this. Pharmaceutical companies aren't funding research into cold exposure because you can't patent ice water. The conventional approach to diabetes is management, not reversal, and there's a lot of money in management. But consider this. The conventional approach has had decades to prove itself. And what do we have to show for it? More diabetics than ever. An epidemic that's getting worse, not better. Treatments that manage symptoms but don't address root causes. At some point, we have to ask whether the conventional wisdom is actually wise. The evolutionary perspective offers a different framework. One that explains why we're getting sicker. One that aligns with what we know about human biology and our ancestral past. One that has been validated by traditional populations who lived in cold environments for thousands of years. I'm not saying throw away your medications or ignore your doctor. I'm saying consider that there might be more to the story than what you've been told. So here's my take on all of this. We've been looking at diabetes wrong. We've been treating it as a malfunction when it might actually be a function, a survival program that's running at the wrong time because we've removed the environmental signals that would tell it to stop. Your body isn't broken, it's confused, it's receiving signals that don't match reality. Summer foods in winter, artificial light at midnight, constant warmth when cold should be triggering metabolic shifts. The solution isn't more drugs, it's realignment. It's giving your biology the signals it evolved to expect. Cold exposure, seasonal eating, respecting light cycles. These aren't extreme interventions, they're returns to normalcy. They're what every human experienced for the vast majority of our evolutionary history. Dr. Kruse calls this the ancient pathway because it's ancient. It's been there all along, waiting to be activated. We just forgot it existed. You have more control over your metabolic health than you've been led to believe. Your genes aren't your destiny. Your environment is your lever, and you can change your environment starting today. What do you think? Does this perspective on diabetes make sense to you? Have you experimented with cold exposure or seasonal eating? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you want more deep dives like this, exploring the hidden connections between evolution, environment, and health, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, stay curious, and maybe take a cold shower.